Whoa, we're live. Good morning, Jason.
It's a morning. I don't know if it's good, but
Yeah, you've been having fun, and this is why we're in our discussion of the importance of patching your infrastructure. And I
yeah,
told you needed to label this patch that,
yeah, we're too early into the show to swear, or we'll get in trouble.
we don't want to do that. We
Gotta wait at least 3 minutes.
Use no foul language here.
At least 3 minutes. I think I can hold back for 3 minutes.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to be.
Who are you?
What?
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Brett Chittum. Yeah, CNWR. Loving every minute of it thus far. I'm lying and not lying. Just kidding. And you are
Jason Slagle, President CWR, guy that's calling random people in the area this morning to tell them to patch their crap.
I gotta say, okay, so when I saw that in the Slack that you were doing that, I thought of the word integrity because you were calling your competition.
Yep, 100% I am. I'm calling everyone. I have a full list of people in Ohio, and if I can identify them, they're going to get called.
Yeah, I thought that's integrity right there. Because who else would do that? I mean, I would hope every person would do something to this effect, but it's not going to happen sometimes. But anyways, we're talking about patching your stuff, and what prompted you? I'm going to be a fly on the wall because you're the smart one in this conversation.
Yeah, so there's a Screen Connect vulnerability out, Connectwise control vulnerability. It's bad. I am privy to how to exploit it. It's going to be a bad time, and so I patched last night our instance. I literally it was Heather's birthday, it's my wife's birthday, and we were literally walking out the door to dinner for her birthday, and I got the call from somebody saying that, hey, this thing's about to drop, like you need to go do this thing. And I literally dropped everything that I was doing, pushed dinner off for the half hour it took me to patch our instance to a version that wasn't vulnerable. It's that bad.
Well, talk about that. I mean, so it's that bad, meaning, I mean, I think people in our space understand when Jason Slagle says it's that bad. It's pretty hairy.
I mean, it's likely to be exploited in the wild within the next, bit, right? Like it's going to take probably a little bit, but it's I would say a week at most, honestly, before we start seeing this actively exploited. And that's not an awesome place to be, honestly. Like,
right.
I mean, the reason I'm calling, right? Like, one, I don't want anyone to have a bad day, competitor or not, right? Like, but two, like those bad days, they're a bad day for the industry, right? They're not just a bad day for, okay, they're patched. They're not just a bad day for like the company that does it. They're a bad day for the industry as a whole. And so, trying to make sure you stay on top of that stuff is, I think, important. Like,
and you this is, can we say what the vulnerability is?
Nope.
Okay, so then we're there. You have a great statement that you said.
I don't. I was trying to figure out who to attribute it to, right? Which is, I was looking on Twitter X or whatever it's called this hour, and the statement was basically, if at this point in time you cannot patch internet-facing infrastructure within 24 hours, you should not be running internet-facing infrastructure. Because the reality of it is that if my prediction is we will see exploitation of this within a couple of weeks. I think it'll actually be sooner than that, but it will be exploited. And it's a double-edged sword here, because like people like me are out there like putting a spotlight on this thing, saying it's really bad. But honestly, there's nothing else we can do. The only thing we can do is try to make awareness of this issue and just generally other issues to try to get people on top of them. And, as I go through Showdown this morning, looking through instances, right, that I'm looking at here, they're everywhere. Like I'm coming across tons of these instances that are just way out of date, and it's not awesome that that's the case. I am starting to see, as I look through today, more and more instances that are actually patched, which makes me feel good. But definitely seeing a good number of them that are not patched.
No, it's and I did the one thing here. I'm going to show this real quick. You know, he says I've seen it talked about everywhere on MSP community. I'm wondering how many MSPs aren't seeing that, and
Yeah.
weeks will go by. Um,
Yes, correct. And I mean, that's correct. And, I'm seeing instances online, like in MSP Geek and other places, right, where people are basically saying they didn't get the email, right? Like,
yeah,
my unofficial poll shows, 3 that got the email and 1 that doesn't so far. Yeah, I mean, definitely seeing instances where people are saying they didn't get the email that were Screen Connect customers from before the ConnectWise acquisition, right? And then there's the whole second half of this, which is like you have to have a present active license to actually be able to upgrade. So we can pivot onto that. I didn't want this to be a old man. It was my birthday, so I'm even older now. Old man comes and yells at cloud. Let's talk about patching in general, right? Like this is on top of, this instance, right? Like we run a fairly extensive, it's not huge these days, but a non-zero amount of public facing infrastructure, right? Like
Oh, absolutely.
We run DNS servers for now, like until I finish migrating everything to Route 53. We run, I run, our Screen Connect, our Automate, right? Like various other tools that we use that are hosted and, UniFi controller, right? And there's risk that comes with all of those things. And, we try all of those things on our side have a patching frequency. And of course we'll do out of cycle patching if a vulnerability comes up, right? So like our patching frequency on most of that stuff tends to be quarterly.
Right.
Unless there's a security vulnerability that drives it to be quicker than that, and we try to stay on top of those security vulnerabilities. And the reason is that there's just so much infrastructure and so much risk associated with patching that, right? Like if there's no security reason for me to patch, I feel that quarterly is fine, right? If for security updates or non-security updates and other things, I think that quarterly is a big enough cadence. But when a security instance comes out, I mean, for sure, we'll drop everything and we'll patch like we did, last night. Like we've done it with UniFi, we've done it with a number of things.
Well, that's why we're late this morning, because you were working on some stuff up till we started the show.
Yeah. I mean, just calling. I made my last call about 4 minutes before I got in here.
Again, that's admirable. There's integrity in that, because I think we as a community, and you said it earlier, as a community as a whole, if something happens to one of us, it's happened to all of us in some way, shape, or form, right? We need to make everybody look good. We need to help everyone to look good and not kill this MSP community.
So when I 100% agree. So when it comes down to patching, I consider this basically into 3 groups, right? Like there's, operating system level patches. Like those are easiest. Those are the ones that I think MSPs have the best handle on, right? Like, your RMM tool or whatever the case is, it handles patching your on-prem or your Windows server, right? It does the knowledge base updates. It does the, first half updates or second half updates. There are caveats there, right? And we have definitely found instances where the RMM tool is keeping Windows 10 in particular on a version that has stopped receiving updates, right? So like you might be on Windows 10 2021 H1, right? Which I believe at this point is no longer receiving updates. So the update manager says there just aren't any updates. And so you need to be mindful of that and make sure that you're on a currently serviceable branch that is receiving updates.
Right.
But I would argue that of all of the patching stuff that we have outstanding there, that is the one that is probably the best solved by MSPs.
Well, and you can only automate so much, right? I mean, if your RMM can help in doing some of that for your clients, but I think there's other aspects like your network, your switches, your firewall, other server, just your Synologies, your NASs, all that. I mean, you can't automate everything, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like you can't. That's the third group that you were just talking about there, right? The second group is third party, and I think this is a partially solved problem in some of our tools. I know we use ImiBot, right? Like in ImiBot, we can create roll-up packages to patch most third-party things. Before that, we were using Chocolatey for LabTech, right? So we were using Chocolatey to manage patches. And a combination of those two things, using something like Chocolatey plus a tool like ImiBot or even your RMM that supports it, like you can get pretty good patching of third party, but it's not, this is again where automation starts to fall over, right? Because something like Screen Connect, right? Like you're going to get notified that there's an update, but you're not going to likely use your, RMM automation to update the, Screen Connect or the automate server, right? Same thing. Like we're not going to automatically roll updates out to like SolidWorks or AutoCAD, right? Like those are going to be, stepwise things that, we're going to need to work with engineers because, maybe there's server side components that need updated. But things like QuickBooks, like we've got those things well sorted. So on top of the patching piece of it, you also need like a vulnerability management component of this that is scanning those things out there and letting you know if there are known vulnerabilities in some of the versions you're running. And all these, I mean, this goes back to CIS, 1.1 and 2.1, right? Which is, a proper inventory and of assets in both the hardware and software area. Right. The third one, which is the one I think you were leaning to, is what I'm calling infrastructure. And that's not just physical devices, right? Like we count, we still run a good amount of VMware and some amount of XCP&G that we're migrating to, right? Like I would consider the VMware and XCP&G host to be infrastructure, right? Like I would consider switches, access points, phones, right? Like who updates phones? Printers, right? Like I'm a jerk, right? If I can,
come on.
No, I mean, if I can persist on a printer, still persistence.
Yeah.
Right. Like, in many cases, initial access is the hardest part. Once I have initial access, if I have initial access and I'm undetected, eventually I'm going to get you. Right. Like with 100% certainty, if you can't stop me and I have all the time in the world to keep digging, I'll find something. So if I can persist even just a proxy on a printer, right, like that, maybe it phones home, it maintains a reverse SSH tunnel or some other sort of thing that from the printer, right? I can still, I mean, first of all, your printer shouldn't be able to talk to anything, right? All the connections to those should be inbound.
But
scanned email and stuff makes that tricky, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's phones like, no one thinks of these things, but I have a Polycom phone on the desk here next to me. It runs Linux. Right on the back end, it's running Linux, right? So like this is a computer. It's not a phone. It's a computer that just happens to have a handset.
Yeah, and
right?
it needs to be patched.
Yeah, so all of these devices are things that I think that is an industry we're generally not as good at patching, and we see it. What are the big vulnerabilities we have going around right now? We have this Avanti thing, screen Connect Secure. Oh, what's it called? The Pulse Connect or whatever it's called, the VPN client.
Right.
That's a thing that people install and they don't ever touch again, right? Like they install the VPN, it's working. It's a thing that they just don't patch. And VDI, right? Horizon, Exchange, right? Like Exchange, there's probably a little less excuse for because Windows Update does do some things there, but a lot of these things are infrastructure, right? And people install them and then they forget about them.
What about your Nest thermostat or your wife, your internet enabled thermostat or something like that?
Those are, so a lot of those IoT devices, updates on them, if they phone home, updates on them are controlled by the vendor, right? Like there's no update button on the thermometer.
On my Nest at home there is, and it doesn't update.
Oh, really? Mine at home auto updates.
I guess I have to change the settings. So.
Yeah, I didn't even realize there was an update setting on it. It does. Mine updates automatically and it stays up to date. So does my Chromecast, and I'm pretty in the Google ecosystem. I mean, but like that Honeywell thermostat over there, right? It's on the Wi-Fi network. It's that we're starting to do some home assistant stuff here at the office, and I have a whole crap ton of.
Oh no, you're gonna hold up the stuff?
These little guys running around here. Right, like this is an ESP32 that's got a temperature and humidity sensor on it that I'm starting to deploy them around the office to get more granular temperature collection to start trying to do some automation around zone control. I mean, it's a Wi-Fi enabled device. It's not running Linux. It's running like a little microcontroller firmware, but like it's a device.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what's your plan to keep that stuff? This one's funny.
Yeah, I saw that.
So there was a whole thing that got picked up by everyone about like a botnet of toothbrushes. I believe I read later that it was not debunked. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how that could possibly be, because I can imagine the toothbrush is phoning home, right? Like, but I don't know.
Got to give a signal. What can I ask you? What is a toothbrush Wi-Fi enabled? What's that monitoring?
Well, so I have a Sonic Care. We use Sonic Care, and the Sonic Care has an NFC chip in it that tells me when the brush head needs replaced.
Yeah, mine, and it also, because I have one as well. It stops for a second to move to the next quadrant of your mouth and all that.
I mean,
so
let's do another one. I know tons of people. I used to have one that have a CPAP. A lot of those CPAPs have connectivity because compliance, right? Like they phone home to let your doctor know that you're wearing the damn thing.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine an exploit on CPAP machines where you can just turn people's breathing off in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's funny, but not. Oh my gosh. Yeah. As we get more and more into Home Assist and Wi-Fi enabled switches and plugs, there's a whole myriad of things that can go on. Even if you have them on a separate VLAN, there's still.
Yeah. It's a thing, right? There's two components to this, right? Which is what is the risk, right? If they're in likelihood of happening in the risk, right? And I recommend, right? Like I created a separate VLAN here that we're starting to put these little Wi-Fi connected things on for that reason. Like they don't need it to be able to talk to any of my infrastructure here. They only need to be able to talk to each other, the Home Assistant server and the internet.
Right.
Right. And even a lot of them, like this ESP32 has no business even talking to the internet, right? It just literally
just needs to get to the box.
To my Home Assistant. So, and we do that a lot. It breaks the brains of my network guys here. Like we'll isolate, like I have non-routed VLANs, right? Like that VLAN storage mostly, but some other things like that VLAN doesn't have a default gateway. There's no router on it. So like you can only talk to it from that VLAN, and it breaks, it breaks people's, I can't hit it from my desk. Yes, that's by design.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So what else? I'm just looking at our show notes here, and you talked about the third-party infrastructure. We talked about automation. You have a patching schedule that you said quarterly.
Yep.
So what else can people do? How can we be ahead of this?
So inevitably you're going to have devices that you can't patch. So the recommendation from me to those devices is they need to be put off into a walled garden to limit the blast radius for when they inevitably get popped, right? Like if they're internet facing and you can't patch them, shut them off. Like off is safer than vulnerable. Like I realize you may have this is a tough business decision, but I promise you that those devices getting ransomware is going to have a bigger impact, especially if they can reach other devices, on your business than you planned shutting them down while you figure out what to do with them. If you absolutely can't, then IP restrict them, right? Like, do whatever you can to limit the blast radius. There is some benefit to doing, geo IP restrictions, but I mean, like almost every YouTuber, save Tom, has now done an ad for NordVPN or Surfshark or PIA or one of the other, just click this thing and be in that country VPN services. And if you are only geo blocking and you're not blocking VPN exit points or Tor exit points, then you might as well not even be blocking anything, because it's not like this isn't a solved problem.
Right, because people can pretend to be elsewhere.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of
but any of that stuff is better than nothing, right? Like, and then you need a plan to deal with it. We still have a couple of 2K8 boxes at various clients for line of business software that can't reasonably update. You wall them off and you do everything you can to limit the blast radius on them, right? And then you force the client to make a plan to, okay, how are we going to deal with this risk here, right? Because this is probably uninsurable risk in many cases. And when it happens, can we pull it off the domain? Can we keep it shut down except when you need to access it because it's only for archival purposes? Like, what can we do to mitigate those risks?
And most of the time, it's running some big machine that can't update to a newer version of Windows, and it would cost them millions of dollars to do that. Yeah, and you've got to come up with plan B and plan C sometimes.
Yep.
All right. Well, we've gone 20 minutes.
I think so.
I think people understand patch their stuff. I don't have any final thoughts. So I'm going to leave you the final thought again.
No, final thought is patch your things. Like, that's it. So
patch your things.
Back to calling.
That's right, man. Hey, everyone, have a good one. Enjoy and like and subscribe.
Yep. Talk to you later. See you. Bye.